Don't come to Christmas, Mom. We're spending it as a real family. The words still hang in the room like frost on glass, sharp and refusing to melt. My phone lies face up on the table, screen gone dark. Beside it, a chipped mug of tea has cooled into a skin that puckers when the furnace sighs through the vents. I keep staring at the handle of the old wooden chair across from me, my husband's chair, the one that doesn't complain when no one sits in it. The chair stares back, empty as a dare. I don't move. My thumb has left a fogged oval on the screen where I pressed it too long, as if I could push the sentence back into my daughter's mouth. Real family. The syllables throb in the quiet. The clock ticks, slow as a drip. Somewhere in the house, the refrigerator door seal moans and then hushes, like even it has decided to be careful with me. On the counter, a shallow cardboard box waits, its corners softened by decades of Decembers. I pulled it down before the call, meaning to test the lights and set aside which ornaments I'd polish tonight, which I'd save for morning. The lid sits askew, enough to show a tangle of tinsel and ribbon, and something pale and crumpled at the top. The paper angel with the crooked halo my daughter made when her fingers were still sweet with glue and impatience. It watches me from the nest of tissue like a small witness to a large mistake. I reach for the mug, sip, grimace, bitter and cold. The tea tastes like the word, understand. The way she said it, bright and careful, like she was stepping over me on her way out the door. We're keeping it small, Mom. You understand, right? Small. As if a table could be too full with me at it. As if my chair were a burden you had to look around to see the tree. I smooth the tablecloth, thumb a thread loose. The cloth is older than she is. I bought it the winter she was 5 and insisted on wearing a reindeer headband to church. The stain near the edge is gravy from the year the dog got underfoot and the platter jumped. I could tell those stories to the empty chair and they would nod along, because the chair remembers what no one else seems to. On the windowsill, an unopened Christmas card leans against the glass, stamped with gold snowflakes that look too tidy to be real. I can read the return address without touching it. Every year, my sister's handwriting shakes a little more. She tries not to complain about the arthritis, but her loops tell the truth. I don't open the card because I already know what's inside. A family photo arranged in heights and matching sweaters, somebody's new baby swaddled like a promise. I don't want their joy to make me mean. I don't want to measure my kitchen against their tree. I could call back. I could say, sweetheart, you must have said that without thinking. You must have meant something else. You must have meant you were tired. Or the kids have colds or the roads. No, not the roads. We live 10 minutes apart if the light at Maple turns green. My finger hovers over her name. The same name I practiced whispering into a newborn ear. The same name I shouted across playgrounds and high school parking lots. I set the phone down because I can hear the reply already, the careful smile lodged in it like a pearl. We just need a quiet one this year. We'll stop by next week. You know we love you. Of course you do. The furnace kicks again and the paper angel follows the draft, nodding forward and back, as if weighing the sentence that banished me. I lift it, the fragile wings warm from the light I'd left on over the sink. On the skirt, my own handwriting curls in faded marker. Emily, age 6. Her scissor cuts wavered then, the halo lopsided because she wanted it a little funny like me. I remember tying the loop of thread. Remember her hands, those hands clapping at the way it spun and flashed against the tree lights. Real family, I say to the quiet, testing the phrase like a sore tooth. My voice startles me, huskier than I'd planned. The house answers with the old settling creaks that come when temperature and memory shift against each other. I hold the angel to the light until the paper shows its veins, the places the glue bled through, the fingerprints she left in the paint. How real does a thing have to be before it counts? The mug leaves a ring on the table when I move it, a faint halo that will dry if I ignore it. I should wipe it. I should turn off the kitchen light. I should slide the box back into the pantry and tell the empty chair we'll try again next year. Instead, I set the angel down beside the phone, the two of them like opposing jurors, and I lay both palms flat on the table to keep from shaking. The silence grows a spine. It rises up behind me, lean and uninvited, reminding me of every winter night I stood at a window and waited for headlights that turned down someone else's street. Outside, the sky darkens in that stubborn way December skies do, as if the day regrets itself. A dusting of powder sugar snow has started, tapping lightly at the glass. I count the taps until I lose track and start over. On the stove, the kettle clicks as it cools. I think of making new tea, real hot this time, the kind that fogs your glasses and tastes like a decision. I think of lighting the candle that lives in the center of this table 11 months of the year and becomes holy at Christmas. The one with the dent along its side from the year it leaned too close to the gingerbread house. I think of leaving it dark, letting the dark say what I can't. I don't open the card. I don't call back. I stand, walk to the pantry, and bring out the string of lights anyway. The plug trembles a little in my hand before it catches the outlet. A weak strand of warm gold winks to life along the counter, spilling across the box, across the angel, across the ring of tea. The light finds the empty chair and lays itself there like a shawl. For a bare second, the room looks occupied. For a bare second, I believe the door will open and someone will laugh that it was all a joke. That of course I'm wanted, that of course I count. Then the strand flickers, steadies, and the truth sits down with me. Okay, I tell the lights. Okay. The word does not break, it lands. It learns my mouth. I lift the angel again and hold her to my chest. The papers crinkle loud in the quiet, and I imagine the small, sticky hand that made her. My own hands are clean now, almost too clean. Somewhere in this house a clock keeps time for a gathering I am not part of. A table somewhere else lays out a feast with a space where I might have been. I breathe in, and the house breathes out, and the empty chair waits like a witness who refuses to leave the stand. The kettle clicked off just as the phone began to ring. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, the one with faded holly leaves stitched along the edge, and picked up. "Hi, Mom," Claire said, her voice light, almost rushed. "Listen, we're still figuring out Christmas, but I think we'll just keep it really small this year. You know, immediate family." I stood there a moment, one hand on the counter's cool edge. "Oh," I said, careful to match her brightness. "Of course." From the other end, the faint murmur of children, a door shutting, the clink of silverware. She was already somewhere else in her mind. "I'll make it up to you," she added, as though I'd misplaced a coin she could return later. "Maybe we can do something in January?" "That would be nice," I said. My own voice sounded unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone standing further back in the room. When we hung up, I poured the hot water over my tea bag. The steam curled up against my face, but I didn't drink it right away. Across the table, a small cardboard box sat open, the one I'd brought down from the attic that morning. Inside, the paper angel my daughter had made in kindergarten lay on top, its crayon smile still faintly smudged where her fingers once pressed. I reached for it out of habit, then stopped. Instead, I set the lid gently back on and slid the box aside. The tea had cooled enough to sip, but it tasted thin. Outside, a neighbor's car door slammed and laughter drifted through the window. I glanced at the calendar on the wall. 2 weeks until Christmas. I traced the square with my fingertip, then put the pen back in its holder. There was no need to write anything in. In the living room, the armchair by the window waited, the afghan folded neatly over the back. I sat down, the paper angel's smile still caught in my mind. Claire's voice, too. Cheerful, certain, leaving no room for my place at the table. I lifted my mug, let the steam fog my glasses, and pretended for a moment I couldn't see the empty space across from me. The days rearranged themselves without asking me. I woke the next morning at 6, not because I had anywhere to be, but because my body still believed in purpose. The house had that winter hush, the kind that makes the refrigerator hum sound like conversation. I boiled water, set out a bowl, and chose the smaller spoon because it makes oatmeal last longer. I told myself I wasn't stalling. On the table, the cardboard box waited where I'd left it. I lifted the lid and took out the paper angel. The crayon halo was still crooked, just as she'd made it with her tongue caught in the corner of her mouth. I propped the angel against the sugar bowl and stirred my breakfast under her paper gaze. It's remarkable how many small things require a witness. Eating, for instance. Food behaves differently when someone's across from you. Steam seems warmer, forks scrape a little brighter. Alone, oatmeal is only temperature and texture. I ate half and covered the rest, telling myself I'd be hungry later. I wasn't. I washed the spoon and left it to dry standing in the tumbler, an old habit from when there were too many dishes for the rack. One spoon looks silly like that, like a soldier at the wrong parade. I dried it anyway and placed it back in its slot. as if someone might come looking. At 9, I put on my coat and walked to the corner store. The sidewalk held last night's powder of snow, a soft grit under my boots. Inside, the radio played a carol, too cheerful for a weekday. I pushed a cart because my hands needed something to do, even though I only needed milk and tea. In the baking aisle, I stopped in front of the brown sugar and read the labels like I might have to defend a choice. "Morning, Ms. Harris," the clerk said. "He's young, with hair that never quite lies down. He calls everyone by their last name because the owner does." "Morning," I answered. "Big plans for the holiday?" he asked, friendly, not prying. I made my smile small, keeping it simple. He nodded, already somewhere else. At the register, I realized I'd forgotten eggs, then decided I hadn't. I carried my bag home without rearranging the contents to keep the milk from knocking the tea tin. When it clinked, I didn't flinch. Back in the kitchen, I set the paper angel on the windowsill over the sink, where the morning light warms the glass. She looked outward, the tissue wings yellowing more than they used to. I collected the mail from the mat, a church bulletin, a charity envelope pre-printed with my first name, and a glossy catalog with elegant table settings in rooms that looked like magazines smell. I kept the bulletin, recycled the rest. The catalog had a page with a candle in a hurricane glass. The caption said, "For intimate gatherings." I ran my finger along the edge and felt silly for the way that phrase stung. At noon, I made a sandwich I didn't want. I cut it diagonally because my husband used to say it tasted better that way. I ate one half and wrapped the other. The paper angel watched from her sill. I told her she could have the next slice and almost laughed at myself. My phone buzzed once, a group message titled "Cookie Swap" from some neighbor I never quite met. I typed "Sounds lovely," then deleted it. Typed "I can bring gingerbread," then deleted that too. I settled on a heart and a snowflake and hated both for saying nothing. In the afternoon, I dusted the shelf where the photos live. A fine film clung to the frame of a picture from 1990-something. Claire missing her front teeth, frosting on her lip, the paper angel in the background hanging heavy from too much glue. I wiped in small circles. The cloth came away gray. I used to narrate cleaning when Claire was small. Now we're making the picture clear, and waited for her to echo me. In the quiet, the sentence felt ridiculous. By late day, the light thinned to the color of old tea. I made actual tea and forgot to drink it. The paper angel had leached a faint curl from the window's draft. She leaned to one side like she was listening for something important. I moved her to the center of the table and set a glass tumbler behind her so she wouldn't tip. A prop for a prop. Evening tried to be kind. I turned on the radio to the station that plays hymns after 5. Between songs, the announcer invited listeners to call in with Christmas memories. I thought of dialing, of telling them about the year Claire insisted the angel needed a friend, and taped a lopsided star to the lamp. How we left them both up until February. I pictured a producer cutting me off gently. "Thank you for sharing, ma'am." I let the song carry me instead. Dinner was soup from the freezer, one of the labeled cartons. Chicken, January. I make when I'm optimistic. I poured it into the pot and stirred until the surface stopped shaking. The paper angel watched. I set a place for 2 out of habit, a plate and a bowl, then corrected myself and put one away. The scrape of ceramic against wood sounded louder than it should. I sat, spooned, swallowed. The soup tasted like something made for someone else. After I washed the pot, I dried the sink with a towel because water spots bother me at night. I lit the candle on the table without thinking and then nearly blew it out because I felt foolish for the ceremony. I let it burn anyway. The paper angel's face flickered in and out of the small living light. I watched her until the wick clicked and steadied. My phone stayed quiet. I picked it up to make sure it worked. I opened the weather app, checked tomorrow's cold, then closed it. I scrolled to Claire's name and read through old texts. Questions about recipes, reminders about flu shots I'd sent, photographs of the kids in Halloween costumes. There was a new message buried beneath a shipping notification. "Hey Mom, found the old ornament box when I was here last month. Kids loved it. Hope that's okay." A month ago. I hadn't seen the box move. I tried to remember if I was home that day. I couldn't. It felt like I'd missed a small, crucial appointment I didn't know I had. At 9, I turned off the lamp but left the candle. The paper angel stood in its glow like a small survivor of some gentler fire. I thought of putting her back in the box, of resting her in tissue like a good thing saved. Instead, I slid her an inch closer to my place and thought, Stay. Then I laughed at myself again, a quiet puff of air that didn't quite become sound. This is how it happens, I told the dim room. Not the big scenes, not the slammed doors, just the little edits. You leave out an egg. You set one spoon. You answer a friendly question with, keeping it simple, and mean it like an apology. And an angel made of paper, once light enough to spin at the touch of a heating vent, begins to feel like stone. Before bed, I checked the locks I've checked every night for 50 years. I paused by the table. The candle had tunneled. The flame sat deep in its own small cave. I pinched it out with wet fingers, and for a moment the after smell of smoke felt like someone else's coat coming in from the cold. In the dark, the paper angel disappeared into the room's shape until I leaned close and found her by touch. "Good night," I said to the space she held. It wasn't prayer, not quite. It was inventory. It was proof. The smell comes first when I let myself go back the kitchen at 5 in the afternoon. December's early dark, pressing its face to the window, while inside, the air is warm with cinnamon and orange peel. The radiator clicks like a metronome. Mittens steam on the register in little damp tents. The radio is tuned to the station that insists the same 6 carols are enough for everyone, and for that hour, they are. Claire is 6, small enough to stand on the stool and still have to stretch. I've pushed her sleeves past her elbows, and she keeps hitching them higher with sugared wrists. We are making cookies that will never come out uniform, star points fatter on one side, candy canes that look like musical notes. She flower dusts my cheek with the kind of seriousness small children bring to mischief, then laughs so hard she hiccups. The hiccup becomes our rhythm roll, cut, hic, roll, cut, hic, until she presses a hand to her chest and pretends to faint into my hip. I catch her. She expects that. I always catch her. On the table sits a spread of supplies I could afford only because I've stretched 100 dinners thin. Glue that smells faintly of school, a paper plate cut into a skirt, gold paint in a jelly jar, the loop of thread we tugged from a stray button. The paper angel is still only an idea, a soft pile of parts. I draw a circle for the face. She draws the eyes big, the mouth a surprise O that makes me laugh. "Halo," she says, holding the jar like a chalice. "Real gold?" "Real enough," I tell her. The halo goes on crooked because her hand is impatient and because she likes it that way. "A little funny," she declares, "like me." We press the wings into place, the glue seeping through and making our fingertips tacky. I write her name on the skirt where she tells me to, Emily, age 6, because she wants the whole future to know who she was. My husband comes in from the yard with pine sap still on his knuckles and a stand of fresh tree to wrestle through the door. He stamps snow from his boots and kisses our foreheads in one sweeping motion, leaving a pine-cold kiss on both. "My girls," he says, and the words warm something in me that never learned how to say it deserved warming. The tree goes up slightly leaning because our living room floor has opinions. We compensate with a folded magazine under the stand. The cover model's smile crushed into duty. When the lights finally agree to light after, he's checked each bulb with the patience of a man who knows the trick. The living room softens into that particular winter glow. 100 little suns making gold of everything they touch. "Ready?" he asks, holding Claire up so she can reach the higher branches. She hands him the paper angel like a surgeon passing an instrument, eyebrows drawn tight with importance. "Careful," she whispers. "She's me." He hangs the angel mid-tree, where the heat from the vent can catch her. And catch her, it does. The little body tilts, spins, rights itself, tilts again, as if learning the rules of air. Claire claps once, sharply, then presses her palms to her cheeks. "She's dancing," she says. "She likes it here." We watch, the 3 of us, long past the moment most families would have moved on to cocoa. The angel slow turns in the draft, crooked halo catching light like a wink. Later, when the cookies cool enough to sit in a tin, we add a handful of orange peels to the stove pot with 2 cloves and let the whole house smell like memory we haven't made yet. My husband carves the turkey-badly ragged slices I pretend are intentional, and Claire sets the table with napkins she insists must be folded like boats. There's a second between grace and laughter where the room is as full as a room can be, and the future doesn't know our names yet, and the angel spins on her thread as if keeping time. Years spool forward, and the scene shifts, a different house, a thinner tree, my husband gone, but not absent. Claire visits from college with shoulders that have learned new burdens. She tosses her bag by the door and goes straight to the boxes in the hall closet. "Where is she?" she calls, and I don't have to ask who. We unwrap the angel together, tissue whispering around her paper dress. One wing has a crease now, a soft seam where time bent it. "It isn't Christmas until she's up," Claire says, and kisses the top of the angel's head like you would a baby. She hangs her carefully, adjusts, steps back, adjusts again, does the math of distance and light until the spin is just right. That night we drink cocoa too sweet and eat toast for dinner because we are both tired and both pretending not to be. And at some point she touches my hand on the table and says, "It's always you and me, like an oath taken without witnesses, is the truest kind." Another winter. A storm knocks out the power. We pile blankets in the living room, candles pooled like small moons along the mantel. The angel doesn't spin because the heat is gone, but she glows in the candlelight as if she's discovered a more solemn dance. We make stovetop popcorn over a camping burner, each kernel a miracle. Claire falls asleep with her head on my thigh, breath a soft saw through the quiet. I sit very still so I don't wake her. The angel doesn't move. I don't need her to. What I remember most isn't the big moments that made the photo albums, but the unphotographed middle, wet mittens and the sound of the knife whirring the turkey, and the way the thread went slick with oil when I tied the loop. The radio stumbling back into the same song. My husband's hand finding my waist when no one was looking. Claire's small palm tapping my cheek to bring me back into the room whenever I drifted into worries about bills. I remember being necessary without having to earn it every minute. I remember my name said with relief. Mom, like a spare key found at the bottom of a purse. Tonight, when the house is too clean and the air too still, I take the paper angel from the windowsill where I've set her to keep watch over a single cup of tea. Her halo is still crooked. The glue has browned to the color of toast. If I hold her close, I can smell only paper and the faintest memory of schoolroom paste. But my fingers remember sap and sugar, and the radiator is clicking again, not because it's broken, but because some part of me has decided it's time to hear it. I carry the angel to the tree. Mine is smaller now, but real, always real. And look for the place a vent might reach. I adjust, step back, adjust again, doing the old math alone. When she finally turns, the motion is modest, almost shy, a nod instead of a twirl. I whisper, "There you are," and the years fold like napkins. For a moment, the room fills with cinnamon and orange, with a child's hiccup, with a man's pine-cold kiss. For a moment, I am the person the room looks toward. The spin slows. The silence returns. But I have seen her move. I have proof that even a paper thing remembers how to catch warm air and call it dance. The snow had been falling since morning, soft and persistent, frosting the edges of the window like lace. I was knitting by the lamp when the phone rang. For a moment, my heart tripped over itself. Claire's number. "Hi, Mom," she said, warmer than I'd heard her in weeks. "Listen, we might have extra space at the table after all. I'm not sure yet. Thomas's cousin might cancel. I'll let you know." The needles paused in my lap. "That would be lovely," I said too quickly. I could almost see it. The long table, the candles, the smell of cinnamon rolls in the oven. After we hung up, I smoothed the yarn over my knees and began to plan in my head. I'd make the cranberry relish she liked, and maybe bring that paper angel from the box, slip it into her tree as a surprise. All afternoon, I moved with that quiet current of hope in my chest. The kettle sang, I ironed my best blouse, I even polished the old brooch my mother gave me, just in case. Evening came. The snow had stopped, the streetlights casting amber pools on the street. I checked my phone twice, then 3 times, wiping my hands on the apron each time as though the call might arrive at any moment. At 7:42, a message buzzed through. "Sorry, Mom, looks like everyone's coming, maybe next year." I stood there, the apron still tied, my hands damp from rinsing the cranberry bag. The light from the lamp caught the brooch, throwing a small, hopeful glint across the counter before fading back into shadow. I untied the apron slowly, folded it in half, then in half again. The cranberry relish went into the fridge, the brooch back into its box. The paper angel stayed in the cardboard carton by the window, its crayon smile turned toward the lid. Christmas Eve arrived like a tide I couldn't hold back. Not with lists, not with tea, not with the careful folding of laundry that didn't need folding. By evening, the house had settled into that deep winter stillness, the kind that feels padded like sound itself has been taken elsewhere. I sat at the kitchen table with the lamp on low, staring at the steam rising from a mug I hadn't touched. It curled up, slow and uncertain, then vanished before it reached the height of my eyes. I felt a kinship with it, exhaled into the air and gone before anyone noticed. The paper angel lay on the table beside me, her halo bent further than I remembered. I'd taken her out earlier without knowing why. Now she was just there, a pale scrap against the grain of the wood, waiting for a tree she would not see this year. My fingertips brushed her skirt, the edge caught on a dry ridge in my skin. Even paper was smoother than I felt. The radio played in the other room, low enough that the words blurred together. Somewhere far off, a church bell counted 8 times. It sounded like it was ringing for someone else. I tried to picture the family table as it must be at this very moment. Chairs pulled close, conversation crisscrossing like threads in a weave. I imagined the children in matching pajamas, the shine of gravy on a platter, the paper angel's absence unnoticed because she had been replaced with something new, something bright, something that didn't have my handwriting on it. The weight of that thought pressed me deeper into the chair. My shoulders rounded in on themselves. My hands cupped the mug not for heat, but to keep them from trembling. My whole body felt like the dregs at the bottom of the cup cooled, forgotten, a shade of what it was meant to be. I could have called someone, a neighbor, the church, even an old friend. But every imagined conversation began with an apology, as if I were already an inconvenience. The energy to make myself sound worth listening to simply wasn't there. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dim. The only light came from the candle I'd lit without thinking earlier in the evening. Its flame shuddered in the draft, pulling shadows long across the table. The paper angel's crooked halo cast an oval of darkness on the wall behind her, like even her light had been misplaced. And that was the image that stayed. A fragile figure made of paper, halo bent, light slipping away from her, and no one to notice but me. I sat until the candle guttered out, the wick curling into itself, a thin wisp of smoke rising, then vanishing into the cold air. Christmas morning's cold had a different weight to it. Not sharp, not biting, just heavy, as though it had been laid across my shoulders in the night and forgotten there. I padded into the kitchen, still in my slippers, and found the paper angel exactly where I'd left her after last night's vigil at the table. She was tipped onto her side, one wing flattened, as if even she had given up the work of staying upright. I reached for the kettle, but my hand hesitated halfway. My eyes stayed on that bent wing. How many times had I repaired it? Twice? 3 times? More? I had fussed over her as though keeping her perfect could keep the years themselves from taking anything else. Yet here she was, lopsided and lightless, still existing. I set the kettle down and picked her up instead. The paper was softer now, edges feathered from age. The halo was still crooked, always crooked, and for the first time I didn't see it as a flaw. It was proof she had endured. Somewhere deep inside, something shifted. It wasn't loud. There was no sudden rush of adrenaline, no pounding heartbeat, just a steadiness, a slow warmth that didn't come from any lamp or fire. The thought came without ceremony. I've let them decide too much of my story. I traced the name on her skirt, my daughter's uneven kindergarten letters, a relic of when I was the sun she orbited. That was still real. No photograph or absence at a dinner table could erase it. And if I could keep this fragile thing safe for decades, surely I could keep some part of myself safe too. I set the angel on the windowsill, where the first pale line of sunlight was pushing through the frost. The draft from the glass caught her, and she turned slow, deliberate, like she was testing the air again after a long sleep. I stood there, watching her spin her small circle. Not much, not fast, but it was movement. And I realized I wanted the same. I didn't know exactly what would change or how, but I knew this. The next turn in my life would not be at someone else's hand. The kettle began to whistle. I let it. For once, it could wait. By mid-afternoon, the frost on the windows had begun to soften, small rivulets slipping down the glass like someone had traced them with a fingertip. I had spent the morning moving through the rooms without hurry, touching objects I hadn't noticed in years, an embroidered pillow from my mother, a chipped porcelain dish my husband once brought back from a business trip. The box of Christmas ornaments still sat in the corner, its lid half open. The paper angel was no longer inside. She kept her new post on the windowsill, halo catching the thin light. I looked at the rest of the ornaments, most of them untouched this year, and felt a tug. One by one I lifted them out, not to decorate the absent tree, but to choose a few that mattered most. The little wooden soldier with the faded red jacket, the glass bell with a crack you could only see when it rang, and a knitted star my own mother had made when I was a girl. Each one went into a small cloth-lined basket. I wrapped myself in my thickest scarf, the one with pockets deep enough for my hands and whatever I might carry. Stepping outside, the cold pressed against my cheeks, but it didn't feel unfriendly. The snow underfoot was packed and crisp, giving a soft crunch with each step. I walked 3 blocks to the small park, to the row of young pine trees the community had planted years ago in memory of loved ones. Most were bare now, their branches tipped with snow, but they were alive, standing straight against the wind. I chose one near the center and, with careful hands, hung each ornament on its branches. The soldier swayed gently, the cracked bell caught a shaft of sunlight, and the knitted star settled against the green like it had been waiting for this moment. When I was done, I stepped back. There was no crowd to admire it, no camera to capture the act. Just me, the tree, and the sound of the wind in the branches. But inside, something unclenched. It wasn't about replacing the Christmas I'd been excluded from. It was about planting something in the world that was mine alone. No permission asked, no place at someone else's table needed. I stood there until my fingertips began to numb, watching the paper star turn slightly with the breeze. In that quiet, I realized this was what self-worth felt like. Not loud, not blazing, but steady and alive. When I finally walked home, the basket swung lightly at my side, empty now, but not hollow. The house was dim when I returned from the park, the late afternoon light already thinning to blue. I kept my coat on as I moved through the rooms, not from the cold, but because I didn't want to linger. Not in the way I used to. On the kitchen table sat the cardboard box, the one that had held decades of Christmas. Half the ornaments were still inside, wrapped in their yellowing tissue. The paper angel watched from the windowsill, her halo a pale circle against the darkening glass. I sat down, rested my palms on the box, and for a long time, didn't move. The quiet felt different now. Less like a weight pressing in, more like an empty space I could decide how to fill. Finally, I began to pack the rest of the ornaments, slowly, carefully, but without the hesitation that used to catch me. Each one I placed back into the tissue, not as an act of hiding, but of putting them away on my own terms. The soldier, the cracked bell, the knitted star, those were gone now, living in the park's pine tree. The others would stay here, with me, until I chose to bring them out again. When the last one was wrapped, I closed the box and slid it into the cupboard above the fridge, a place not for forgetting, but for safekeeping. Then I turned to the windowsill. The paper angel was still leaning slightly, halo catching the last ribbon of sunset. I lifted her in my hands, felt the familiar give of her paper skirt. For years, she'd been the emblem of my place in someone else's celebration. This year, she had stood watch over mine. I carried her to the bedroom and set her on my nightstand, beside the small lamp and the book I'd been meaning to start. Here, she wasn't waiting to be hung on someone else's tree. She was here for me, in the light I chose to turn on or off. I didn't speak, but as I smoothed the cover of the book, I knew the act itself was the statement. I am done standing in doorways, waiting for someone to wave me in. Outside, the street lamps flickered on, and somewhere far off, I heard the sound of laughter. It passed like wind through branches. I switched on the lamp, opened my book, and began to read, the angel's halo casting a faint, warm shadow across the page. The next morning began without ceremony. No ringing phone, no unexpected knock, just the steady light of winter spilling through the curtains and settling on the foot of my bed. I lingered there for a while, listening to the muted hum of the world outside, a car starting, a dog barking 2 streets over, the low creak of the house adjusting to the cold. It all felt steady, predictable, and for the first time in weeks, that steadiness felt like a gift. The paper angel still stood on my nightstand, her halo catching the pale morning light. I reached out and straightened her skirt, then left her exactly as she was, halo still slightly askew. That imperfection didn't trouble me anymore. It told the truth, about her, about me. about the years we'd both weathered. I rose slowly, wrapped my robe around me, and padded into the kitchen. The cupboard above the fridge was closed, the box of ornaments tucked away out of sight but not out of mind. I knew exactly where they were, and more importantly, I knew they would wait for me until I decided it was time. A mug warmed in my hands as the kettle clicked off. I carried my tea to the living room and settled into the chair by the window, the one that looked out over the street. A thin line of frost edged the glass, and beyond it the park's pines stood in their quiet row. It was too far to see the little soldier, the cracked bell, or the knitted star. But I knew they were there. I liked imagining them swaying gently in the cold, catching what little light the day had to offer. They were no longer shut away in a box. They had their own place in the world now, just as I did. I thought about the years when Christmas had been a whirlwind of lists and cooking and making sure everyone else was comfortable. I'd been proud of those years, and I didn't regret them. But they were behind me, and I felt no ache in admitting it. There was room to decide, to choose, to protect my peace the way I had once protected my family's comfort. From the windowsill, the paper angel seemed to watch me. For decades, she'd been a reminder of who I was to others. Now she was a reminder of who I could be to myself. The tea was cooling, and the day was waiting, but I didn't rush. I sat there, letting the stillness wrap around me, feeling the quiet not as absence, but as presence. Somewhere deep, I knew this was the true gift of the season, not a place at someone's table, not a photo on the mantle, but the calm certainty that I belonged to myself. I reached for the book I'd started the night before, opening it to the page marked by a sprig of ribbon. Outside, a gust of wind bent the pines and then let them spring back, their branches shaking off a fine dusting of snow. The angel's halo caught the sunlight just then, flashing for the briefest moment before settling back into its gentle tilt. Some traditions, I thought, are worth saving even if they have to be rebuilt. And with that, I began to read.